So today, I'm taking you on a walk with me to the Wick, which is an Iron Age hill fort, and it was built around 2,000 years ago by the Celtic people of Britain. It sits at around 180 metres high and overlooks the town of Henley in Arden. Now this is one of my favourite walks, because not only do we get some great views, but there are also some really interesting things to see along the way. The first thing that strikes you about this place is how quiet it is. There were no other cars parked here when I arrived. I didn't meet anyone else walking up either, but even though it's so peaceful and serene, it still has quite a mysterious feel to it. You can imagine what life would have been like here all those thousands of years ago, when these ancient people lived here. This part of the trail takes us through a wooded area where there are lots of trees. They're all covered in moss now because they've grown over such long periods of time. These trees look very similar to the ones that grew here back then as well. As you continue your journey further into the woods, you come across more trees growing upwards in different directions. Some of them seem almost vertical. It feels like you could just fall downwards if you weren't careful enough. Eventually you reach the top of the hill and you start to be able to see over the horizon again. At this point, the clouds had started to clear away, so you could actually see where you were going, and I decided to take another little detour off the main path just for a few minutes to go and check out something called the Rainbow Gap. Now if you stand in exactly the right spot, you should be able to see a rainbow appearing between two hills. Unfortunately, I couldn't see anything from here. Maybe next time. But after looking around for a bit longer, I did manage to find something pretty cool. If you keep following the path forward, you eventually reach a small clearing that looks out onto the surrounding countryside. From here, you can see the town of Henley in Arden, nestled amongst the fields below. In the distance, you can make out the River Avon, winding its way towards Stratford-upon-Avon, and behind that, you can see the Cotswolds. Looking back the other direction, you can see the hillsides leading up to the Wick itself, and although it doesn't look too steep from here, it definitely felt much steeper than it looked from the bottom. After spending a while admiring the view, I headed back down the path and continued on my way to the Wick. Along the way, I came across this field and noticed something strange happening. At the far end of it, a large truck seemed to be disappearing into thin air before my eyes. When I zoomed in closer using my camera, I realized that the truck wasn't actually gone. It was just hidden behind a bank of fog that had rolled in from the north. Although it might sound a little bit scary, this type of weather phenomenon happens regularly here in England during winter months, and usually it clears up within a couple of hours or so. However, sometimes during certain conditions, fog can last 4 days at a time. Just as I thought, my day was getting better and better. Another cloud rolled in from the south and completely engulfed everything. I stood there watching the sky change color as the sun disappeared beneath the clouds for the final time. Even though the light was fading fast, there was still plenty left to explore, so I carried on walking forwards until I reached the entrance to the Wick. Once I got close enough to the edge of the cliff face, I stopped to admire the view once again. By this point, the sun had set, and the colors in the sky were absolutely incredible. The blue hues mixed together with the pinks and purples made for a beautiful display across the whole landscape. I spent a good amount of time standing here, watching the sunset and taking in the beauty around me. And then, when the sun had finally disappeared below the horizon, it was time to head inside. The Wick itself isn't very big at all. It only takes around 10 minutes or so to walk from one end to another. But even though it's small, there's still plenty left to see here. You can explore the remains of ancient settlements that were built here thousands of years ago. There are also lots of different paths you can follow through the woods, as well as several streams running down the hillside. I decided to follow one of these streams for a bit to explore what else I could find here. This path led me down towards the bottom of the hillside, where there were some more trees growing upwards in different directions. It felt like I had stepped back in time again. As I continued my way through this area, the trail eventually reached an opening that looked out onto the surrounding countryside once again. From here, you can make out